Welcome to the Tech Flash. If you're looking to increase your ed tech knowledge that's quick and easy to listen to, you have come to the right place. Let's join our host Josh and see what today's episode is all about.
Hello and welcome to the Tech Flash. Listen, again, pumped that you're here. That we got part 2 with Beth Fugate.
Thank you.
Super excited you decided to stay in the room, recording 2 episodes back to back. I mean, it's always a fun question. I've never thought about, Beth, but do we need a wardrobe change?
I know.
Like, we're in the same outfits for 2 episodes. They're going to come out in 2 different weeks. Just kind of a fun idea to think about, isn't it?
Next time I come, I'm bringing a wardrobe change.
There we go. Maybe I should just have T-shirts that are lined up in the closet. Here's your T-shirt for this episode. Here's your T-shirt for that episode. Well, cool. Now, listen, I know in the beginning, Beth, for when we talked about that teacher side of it, I didn't really give you a part to really kind of talk about yourself. I kind of did that for you. So just give us some highlights. People that are listening may know you because they're listening inside of Bradley County.
Yeah,
but people that are not listening, kind of tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I am the district mathematics coordinator for Bradley County Schools. I'm finishing up my 9th year in that role, and I serve all K-12, and I serve every school. Before that, I came to the district office from Walker Valley High School and just had an amazing time serving and learning with those students there. And before that, I came from Rutherford County. So I'm a graduate of Middle Tennessee State University, very proud, go Blue Raiders. And so when I graduated from college, I stayed and worked in the county there. So I worked at Eagleville School. It's a special K-12 school in the corner of the county. And there is a tremendous part of my heart that still resides there. I learned a lot from there, but I worked for Eagleville School in Rutherford County there for 7 years before moving to Bradley County. And it has just been the most wonderful transition that the Lord has given me in my life.
Now, what year did you start here in Bradley County Schools?
My husband and I moved to Cleveland in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. So a good bit ago at this point.
Okay. Because I went to Walker Valley, but that was way before you showed up.
Okay, good.
So
Josh,
I was thinking maybe was Beth there when I was there? You're trying to think of those thoughts.
Yeah.
But
I left Walker Valley to come to the district office in 2017, but it was just the most special 5 years of my life that I served there. And genuinely thought I would just die in G109. I loved it so much. But you know how the Lord has his way of working things out for his good. So anyway, it has just been an awesome transition. And I blink my eyes and cannot believe that it's been nearly a decade since I had my own classroom. That's really shocking to me. But if Bradley County Schools teachers are listening, that's why I'm out in your classroom so much, is because that's where my heart is. I love to be with our students.
I feel like even when I'm in buildings, I'll see you in there. You're walking around. There's no hanging out. There's no meeting with principals. We're meeting with teachers. That's and I know that's where your heart is.
Yes, thank you.
And I know we appreciate that in the district. Now, listen, as in part 1, I've already said we kind of talked about the teacher side of it. You highlighted the model lessons that you do with the teachers. They come in, and I didn't know this part of it, but the teachers come in and they watch that because really we learn from other people. And we highlighted that in part 1 to be able to do those things and to I'm getting tongue tied here, but just to be able to collaborate, to be able to understand each other, to grab ideas. That's really important. Yeah. And so from going from the teacher side of it and asking those, advancing questions and the things that we do and all the things that we build into a lesson. But on the other side of it, what does that look like for a student? Are there things that we look for as a mathematics teacher? Are there things that we just know naturally happen? How does that look for a student?
So a dear colleague and friend of mine, Dr. Kyle Prince, who has also done some consulting work with us, he says everything we say to a student communicates something to that student. So the way in which we position our students, the questions that we ask them, even think about the level of the questions that we ask them, somehow communicates something to them. So we want to really position our students as those mathematical thinkers and doers, and that they are capable of solving math problems. So from the student perspective, it looks a lot of what I like to call grappling and being a little bit creative and just trying to figure some things out. try something, see if it works, see what that yields for you. And if that doesn't seem to be reasonable, well, what else could I try? Or is there another model I might could consider to help me arrive at the solution? So it really now looks more like the student doing the work and doing the thinking.
You talk about grappling. I think about our previous conversation where you talked
Hmm.
about the teacher is in the mathematics classroom. They're given a task and they're going around to the groups of 2 or
Yep.
3 and they're asking those advancing questions. And so, we've kind of scripted our advancing questions. We know what we're going to ask to
Sure.
kind of get them moving in the direction. But if we're really grappling or we're pulling for things, each time we go to a group, that
Hmm.
advancing question is very different
Sure.
for each student or for
Absolutely.
each group.
Yeah.
And that even goes back to knowing the
Mm.
student. So how does that,
Oh,
I know that plays a role, but if you're going through a task, how do you really formulate, is it in the moment you're asking these questions, you're just
mhm.
deviating a little bit from
Yeah.
your question? Or is those lots of, again, the questions in advance you're going to
Sure.
ask those
Yeah.
students?
So hopefully there's some success criteria designed for that task. And again, here in Bradley County schools, we have the teacher success criteria really fleshed out well, which answers the question for the teacher: what am I looking for and listening for the students to do and say? And so if I have in mind already the mathematical learning goals for that lesson, then I'm able to respond naturally to students. So again, when I said, oh, it's not about memorizing the question, but it is about an intellectual preparation of a conversation that you're having really with every student, but maybe based on how they approach the problem, because they're just grappling with it. They're working with it. They're taking their prior knowledge, and hopefully we've activated that so that they see how to use that. And then through our questioning as teachers, we can extend their thinking. And so from the student perspective, at the end of that, they're thinking, wow, I figured that out on my own, because the teacher didn't necessarily tell me what to do.
Yeah.
The teacher asked me some questions to help me figure out what to do.
Now, when we think about listening and we think about trying to have that intellectual ability to go off script a little bit and ask the questions that our
Sure.
students need, I want to take you back 9 years ago,
Okay.
maybe 10 years ago,
Yes.
12 years ago.
Yeah. Back in G109.
You're back in G109, your math classroom.
Yeah.
What did that look like? How did those questions come up for you? How did you
Mhm.
plan for those?
Yeah. So I had a lot to learn, and Lord, let me go back to G109 and correct my wrongs at the time, but I say often to teachers, just when we know better, we do better. So I cannot say that every day looked like what I'm describing now. It was early on in the years of the transition with the effective teaching practices and beginning to learn what assessing and advancing questions were. In fact, I remember the summer I went to Cleveland Middle School and learned from Bob Pritchard, who was the facilitator of that TDOE training that summer. Like, that was the first time I learned about this style of learning. So I had a lot to implement myself. But once I realized that the students did not need me to tell them everything to do, it totally changed the way that I approached instruction. And about that same time, Danny Coggin brought in some Kagan structures and Kagan learning to Walker Valley. And again, I remember being in the cafeteria and like this was the first time I had learned it. And now I was probably 10 years into my profession at that time. And I was thinking, why has nobody ever told me about these engagement structures? I love them so much. And so I learned about turn and talks and, numbered heads together where students are working together. But then it really just changed the way that I approached mathematics. So God love the children that survived with me in G109 as I was ironing out all of my kinks. But we had a good time doing it. We had a really good time doing it.
Yeah, and I think that productive struggle is good for us as educators because
Mhm.
yes, we know the background, we know the content,
Yeah.
but we're still crafting.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like the show. Like
Yeah.
if you told you before the show, if you listen to episode 1 till now, there's a huge difference because we're
True.
continuing to craft, we're
Yeah.
continuing to grow as
Yeah.
educators. And I think too, as I had this random thought while you were talking, sometimes we think again, students don't know things but they do.
They do.
And they're also learning from their other content teachers,
Sure.
right? So the things that we're learning in English and history, a lot of those things can apply to the math classroom
Yeah.
because we're taking those real life
Mhm.
tasks that they can learn somewhere else and
Yeah.
applying it to the classroom.
Yeah.
And, I want to go, we can go back to your classroom or we can think about now. But I think about these strategies, Kagan strategies. We think about the advancing questions, things that we're doing within these tasks. And I think about students and I think about what are they really doing, but maybe what are they not doing? Like, is there times you go through that task, you're huddled up with your 2 or 3 kids and it's just crickets, or you're not really getting the responses you need.
Yeah.
How do you get them on par to have that more mathematical conversation?
Sure. So actually, I will go back to G109 because I have a very pivotal moment in my 20 years in education. I was trying to do task-based instruction. Again, this was in the early stages of it. And I had a group of students that were repeating the course. So this was their second time, not necessarily back with me, but back in the same content area. It was crickets, Josh. And I'm standing at the front of the room and I'm just asking them questions and they're just staring at me, right? And so I finally just stopped and put my hands on my hips and I said, guys, why are y'all not talking to me? And one of them said, because we don't know you. And I said, all right, well, we're going to fix that now. And so I grabbed my stool and I sat in the middle of them, kind of huddled them in a little bit and really just told them and developed a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because none of this works if the connection with your students is not there. So that relational piece is monumental and can never be overlooked. But once your students begin to trust you, that you're not just going to tell them what to do, that you're going to ask them questions, and that actually communicates a belief in them that maybe they've never had in themselves before. That really begins to change in the classroom and you'll get some less crickets. I'm not saying every day there won't be some crickets happening, but the relational piece and the connection with the students can really not be overlooked.
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because, we've built this kind of 2-part series to talk about task and doing all the right things to get them to answer questions, but really that relationship.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's a miss that we, as teachers, we're coming in, we're going to teach content.
Yep.
They know they're going to act a certain way. They're going to do what we want. They're going to have that compliance part of school to really have a student say, listen, we don't know you. We don't really trust you. That's so key. And I even think about my time at Akoi Middle.
Yeah.
I remember when Corey Lindbergh first came in the building and our first meeting as a staff, and he was like, love your kids.
Yes.
Like, I don't remember a ton of what he said.
That's right.
But love your kids. Get to know them. Because it's almost like when, as coworkers, right? If we're going to work together on a daily basis, me and you, Beth, and you don't trust me.
Sure.
Then that our work relationship's not going to work. We're not going to be better at anything.
Yeah.
And so for our students to trust us, for our students to understand us, not just as their teacher, but maybe as a somewhat of a peer, but still be, professional and all those kind of things. But I think that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, just explain the process to them. This is not going to be a class that you come in and you just copy what I say or copy the notes or problem after problem. Once students understand the design build of the classroom, that tears down some of the barriers because our students walk in with a history of mathematics. And we can tell so much about how they see themselves as a mathematician or not. And oftentimes, depending on their experience in mathematics, they have a very fixed mindset of themselves as a mathematician. So part of that relational piece, like we were saying as a teacher, is to tear down some of those barriers and change that mindset.
Yeah, and even you talk about mindset, I think about the mindset with writing. I've met with like Elizabeth Kaler.
Yes.
I've met with,
Leanne,
McDonald, and
Amanda.
Leanne. And we all talked about that mindset of tearing down those walls and really changing it. Because, I admitted it even in a recording that writing is not my thing yet, right? We learned that word, not yet. To have students understand that they can do things and it's not compliance, it's real life.
Yeah.
I think once we get away from that compliance for them, where they just walk in, here's your task, you solve it, awesome, you got an answer, X equals whatever, and you move on. But to make it real life, that's so key. So like, in building that real life, how does the kids continue that conversation now? So like in June, you had this conversation. and now you're building that relationship
Yeah.
with them. Did that improve your
Oh,
task and your talks with them?
absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, it was a pivotal moment. I mean, I could close my eyes and see exactly where those students were sitting in that classroom. I knew where I was standing in at the board and trying to get them to do the math, but seeing their reluctance. And so from then on, I made an intentional preparation to make sure that we had some connection before content. You hear us say that sometimes in our instructional coach meetings, our math teacher leaders, even when we meet with adults, we want to connect with one another because, and one of my favorite principals that I ever got to serve with, she's no longer living now, but Miss Rhonda Holton is who hired me at Eagleville. And she said, Beth, the students don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I would say that's in general, that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So once I was able to establish that, I needed that realization with that particular group of students. And once I was able to establish that and transition, and again, explain the process. Like, guys, you're not just going to be in here and just copy a bunch of math problems down because that's mimicry. And I'm not
Yeah.
teaching you how to think. And when you leave me today, whether or not you know all of the content for integrated math 1, 2, and 3, what I need you to be able to do is think.
That's a skill that sometimes, even if it's just not mathematics, that's a
Sure.
great skill to use across the board. Whether, no matter content, whether you're in a professional job, whether you're working at Walmart or
Sure.
high school, like
Yeah.
you've got to have those thoughts to be able to, here's a problem that came up. And
Mhm.
whether it's, again, math or not, to be
Exactly.
able to pivot, to
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
to ask those questions.
Mhm.
And, random thought, and I
Okay.
didn't plan this thought, but when I asked about like them asking questions, right?
Mhm.
We've talked a lot about the teacher asking those
Sure.
questions. Let's flip it again. How does that look for a student? How do you
Mhm.
coach a student? Or do they just
Mhm.
naturally
Yeah.
ask those advancing questions to a
Sure.
teacher?
Yeah. Yeah. So what we ask for teachers to do is to present some opportunities that are maybe non-mathematical at the beginning. Like, here's a picture. Tell me some things that you notice and wonder about this picture. And then begin to get them to see maybe some mathematical patterns that are there, but just to spark their curiosity, to train them to have a critical eye, to think about what's presented to them, not just take it for what it's worth, but really dive in and say, well, what do I notice about that? And what questions do I have about that? Now, it could be a picture of a dozen eggs with a couple of them missing. I mean, it could literally, we call those image talks and different things like that. And then eventually you begin to get into things that, okay, well, now let me show you this graph of this parabola or something like that. And then what kind of questions you notice and wonder. So you build up over that so that you teach students to be critical in thought.
Yeah. Going back to that original quote that we talked about, let them
Mm-hmm.
notice, let them wonder. And then the curiosity
Sure.
pulls into to almost like train. You're not training
Yes.
them to do it, but that's a real life thing,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
right? So again, we've talked about all these
Mm-hmm.
mathematical mindset and the
Mm-hmm.
ideas and
Mm-hmm.
task and advancing questions, those educator talk,
Yeah,
but really it's getting them to do real life thing, but you're putting it in the content of math.
that's right.
I think that's really cool. That's awesome.
Because by the time we're done with them, you have to be what we call a quantitatively literate citizen. We want you to be able to ascertain data from wherever it comes from in the news, on the internet,
Yeah.
from AI, be able to look at the data presented to you and recognize it and then ask questions around it.
Man, this is deep. I,
Awesome. Yes.
again, like just great
Mm-hmm.
conversations. Beth, as we start to wrap up, and I
Okay.
really don't want to,
Yeah,
but
it's fun.
we're trying to stay on track with things. But let's think about maybe your time in the classroom, or maybe your time from the
Mhm.
classroom till now, and you've had time to, we process it and we know better, and we're changing things. What is one thing that we could share with a math teacher that they can take from our conversation
Mhm.
today and use it tomorrow?
I would tell math teachers to do the math. Before you get in front of your students, do the math problem yourself. I don't care how many degrees you have in mathematics or how much content knowledge you have about mathematics. Do the math task and think about how students will do the math
Mhm.
task. and it will change the way that your facilitation goes.
Yeah, and even the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I know it's like my time as a special education teacher. I can remember a spell where a lot of read aloud programs are coming out. Like I had iPads, we had
Okay,
Chromebooks.
sure.
And I'm like, well, this program is awesome. They're going to love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember this kid sitting in class with, hey, here's a program. It's going to help you read this lesson today or the story passage, whatever. And it just didn't work. And I was like, buddy, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like you just click the button, you do this and it works.
Yeah, it's supposed to work.
But he didn't like it.
Yeah.
So then it took me the time to think, all right, I need to find a different one.
Mm-hmm.
And that one didn't work. It wasn't until like the third or fourth one I found.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could see him skyrocketing through his academics because he found a program that worked for him. So I think about the math. Like as a teacher, don't just solve the problem like you said. Solve it through the eyes of a student.
That's right.
See where their errors are, their misconceptions, maybe what questions they're going to ask.
That's right. Yep.
And that's going to go, once we understand that, I feel like even that goes back to our previous conversation of planning the lesson.
That's right.
The tasks, the advancing questions, because it's just not my lens as a teacher.
Yes.
It's my lens of a teacher and the lens of the student.
The students.
I think that's incredible.
And they're why we show up every day.
Yes, they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh.
Man, listen, this was awesome, Beth. I really appreciate you saying yes and being on the show. And we'll have to be back.
Yes. I mean, I can talk about mathematics, learning, and instruction for hours.
Oh, I believe it. And like math, again, like it's not, I can do math, but I don't think I went through that spell of like what we've talked about.
Yeah.
For me, it was more of here's your problem, here's this, solve it. Here's your word problem or task every once in a while. So it's really changing it. And even as my kids come up, I might have to call Miss Fugate up and get a little tutoring and how to do some advanced questions at home.
I would love it. Well, but you have to bring the dogs.
Yes, we'll bring both of them. Well, cool. Well, awesome, Beth. Before we wrap up, any last kind of words you want to kind of share with anybody?
My last words are just an expression of gratitude, because there is just no one closer to heaven than teachers. And I'm so grateful for the work that they do and the service that they provide for our students.
Yes, it takes a special person, I feel like. Not just a special person, but a special person with gifts that want to grow students.
Awesome.
Well, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Now, listen, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Remember, all the audio you can see on Apple. We're still working on the music part of it. Or not music, the video part of it. But if you want to see my face and Beth's face, you can always check it out on the YouTube and on Spotify.
Awesome.
Well, awesome, Beth, for part 2 of our little episode series there. I appreciate it. Until next time, we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Tech Flush podcast. Stay tech savvy, keep those gadgets charged, and remember, teachers and technology go hand in hand, connecting students to a world of knowledge for an electrifying learning experience. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word about the Tech Flush to your friends. Catch all episodes on Apple Podcasts. See you next time on the Tech Flush.